Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we're going over the Thursday Night Football Showdown Slate, the Bears versus the Cowboys. And I gotta say, this is not the most exciting game in the world. We only have a 42.5 point over-under. Two pretty solid defenses. The Bears obviously having the better defense. You have a talented Cowboys offense going up against, pretty good Bears defense. So we'll see how that goes. But I think this game's going to be pretty sluggish. I don't expect too many points to be scored in this game. We only have a 3-point spread in the Cowboys' favor. But anyway, we'll break it down anyway. But before we continue, if you guys could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. If you're interested in spreadsheets to build every single week for the NFL season or every single night for the NBA season, links are in the description below for my Patreon as well as my Discord. And I think without further ado, I say we get into this slate. So again, I'm not looking forward to this game too much. I know Cowboys and Bears fans are, but just from an outside perspective, not the most exciting game. But we're going to start off with Zeke here. He comes in at 11,200, the most expensive guy in the slate by about 400, and I think that's deservedly so. I think Dak could definitely be the highest price guy, but Zeke's been fine this year, and like I said, I think this game's going to be pretty ugly. I do think the Cowboys take a run-heavy approach here versus the Chicago defense, and we have a 42.5 point over-under. So this screams, a game where the Cowboys just keep the ball on the ground, pound it out with Zeke, gets 20-plus touches, hopefully over 100 yards, and gets to the end zone once or twice. And with Zeke, we're going to get the volume. Now, the talent's there, but the efficiency has not been there for him this season. I'll talk about that in a second. But, like I said, the volume will be there. He's getting 23 touches per game, which is fifth most in the NFL. He's been solid this year. He definitely feels disappointing, especially for those of you who drafted him in your top 3 or 4 picks in fantasy redraft leagues, which I had the 4th pick, and I ended up picking Zeke. And, I haven't, been, super disappointed, but I've also haven't really been too excited about owning Zeke. I'm not expecting these win me a week kind of weeks from Zeke anymore at this point. He's shown it a couple of times, but he's just not having those absolutely dominant weeks like he did seasons prior, but he's been solid. 20, 16, 20, 8's really rough versus Minnesota, but then 16, now he had a really good stretch of 3 games or 2 games where he had 29 points versus Philly and the Jets, which were actually 2 pretty good run defenses. Then 17, 18, 23, 13. So he had 2 really good games and then some meh games and a couple 20-point games, which, from Zeke, we're pretty much expecting at least 20 points every single time he's on the field, which really has not been the case this season. And he's been under 4.5 yards per carry on the year. And like I said, he's not been efficient, but he's always going to get the work. And the Cowboys should employ a run-heavy attack, as the Bears' run defense has definitely softened up with Akeem Hicks being gone, and he can't come back until week 15. I know he returned to practice, I believe, very recently. I think that was from December 2nd, that report. But he can't come back until week 15, so we're in the clear there. You don't have to worry about that. It's not like they suck versus the run, the Bears, but we've seen some good games on the ground versus them. I know Latavius Murray had a really good game, and then there's someone else right off the top of my head. I can't remember, but they've had some running backs have some pretty decent games versus them. They're still 12th DVA versus the run, but those Cowboys, they got a good offensive line, and Zeke should be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Really hasn't been the case this season, but he's definitely capable of having a heavy workload and performing well. Now, the rushing yards in the past 4 games have not been there. 71 yards, 86, 45, 47, 139, 111, 105. That's great. But then 62, 35. Those are 2 rough games. But then 125, 111. Yeah, that's great. Then his first game back after being in Cabo for the summer, he had 53 rushing yards on 13 attempts. So he's been kind of all over the map, and he hasn't been completely consistent. More than likely he's going to get you double-digit points. It really just depends if he gets into the end zone or not, if he's going to have a big ceiling game. The Bears are allowing 24.8 points per game to running backs, which is 14th most. He's the safest bet for volume on this slate, and Tony Pollard is currently questionable. Not like it really matters, but Pollard takes away a couple carries a game. It doesn't really make too much of a difference, but obviously it would help Zeke if Pollard would be out, just because he'd get even more of a workload. So Zeke, yes, he's definitely one of the best plays on the slate, and I'd have a hard time fading him on a showdown slate, especially given the lack of options on this slate. So yes, Zeke is definitely in my player pool for sure. Dak Prescott, he comes in at 10,800, and I definitely have interest in him. He's been pretty good most of the time this year for fantasy purposes, but he's had a very, very easy schedule, I will say. And he did struggle in a tough matchup versus New England, but he also did great in a tougher matchup last week on Thanksgiving versus Buffalo, which Buffalo is a tougher matchup than New England is so far this season. So I think he's going to be fine. Well, I shouldn't say it's a easier matchup than Buffalo. It's an easier matchup than Chicago. But, New England, Buffalo are right up there in the tops for being, the 2 toughest teams to for fantasy points given up to the quarterback position. I worded that wrong. But yeah, New England and Buffalo, definitely a gauntlet of tough matchups. And the Bears aren't a slouch matchup either. They're going to be pretty tough. But I think he'll be fine. Chicago is 8th DVA versus the pass, though, but they're also allowing only 15.1 points per game to quarterbacks, which is 7th fewest in the NFL. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for Dak, but he has high upside. He's got a rushing upside as well. Now he doesn't, have huge rushing games every single game, but when he wants to run the ball, he can definitely do it. He's not like like Lamar Jackson or anything close to that, or really even Deshaun Watson, but he's capable of running the ball, which gives him a little bit of a floor. And yes, he has the potential to have a pretty good game here. Do I expect a huge game out of him? No, I don't. We only have a 42-point total. They're only 3-point favorites. I don't expect a lot of points to be scored here. Now, but again, he did it versus Buffalo, where he had 49 pass attempts, 32 completions, 2 touchdowns, 27 fantasy points. But I think we're stretching a little bit. I think he can get you anywhere from 22 points on DraftKings in this game, just as a baseline projection. And he has the highest probability of being the highest scoring player on the slate. I mean, him versus Dak, if you want to, him versus Zeke, that's a tough decision to make if you had to choose between the two of them. I'm personally going to try my best to just fit both of them in there, which I think you guys should as well. But I'd probably have to go with Dak just because, he's the quarterback, but I'd really try to get both in. And I do think Dak is a fine play on this slate. And not a hot take or anything, but yeah, 10,800 for Dak. I don't mind that. Allen Robinson, he comes in at 9,600. So he had 2 great games in a row in very easy matchups versus Detroit and the New York Giants, where he had 22 points and 28 points, and he's had 22 targets the past 2 weeks. And it also helps that Taylor Gabriel's out. He has about a 15% target share this season, so always when you take away a 15% target share, always going to open up some extra targets for just pretty much anyone on the field. And as for Allen Robinson, he has a 25% target share, a 35% market share of the team's air yards, and a 62% weighted opportunity share, which is all pretty near, not league high, but it's up there. So he's definitely getting the volume, and he's got the talent. We know Allen Robinson has the talent. He's just kind of handicapped from Mitch Trubisky throwing in the ball, which is definitely tough. But Dallas is 23rd DVA versus the pass, but they're also only allowing 29.7 points per game, which is 6th fewest to the wide receiver position, but they've been pretty leaky to the tight end position, so I don't think he's going to have as easy of a go as he had the past 2 weeks, but he's very capable of dominating an individual matchup. And if you do think Dallas is up the whole game, I'm not saying they're going to blow these guys out, but if they do, it would obviously help Allen Robinson get some softer pass coverage later in the game. And I can definitely see this being a pass-heavier attack for Chicago, especially if they fall behind and David Montgomery can't get the ball going on the ground, which he's definitely had troubles doing that this season. So Allen Robinson, I think he's fine. Now, he's at a price point where I feel like I'm going to have a hard time fitting him in because when I'm starting my lineup, I'm probably going to plug in Zeke. I'm going to plug in Dak. I'm not saying you have to captain both of those guys. Or at least one of those guys in every single lineup. But if you do, you're going to run out of salary pretty quick. And Allen Robinson at 9,600, I'm going to prioritize Zeke and Dak, so I have a hard time seeing myself probably being able to fit in a 9,600 guy. But if you're making multiple lineups and you want to, go with an Allen Robinson, captain just to get a little different from the field, he could definitely take over a game and, you'd probably be at lower ownership. So don't hate the idea of that in GPPs, but he's in a weird price spot for me where I feel like he's going to have a hard time making my main lineup. Amari Cooper comes in at 9,400. And actually, I think you can get away with fading him. I know he's cheaper than Allen Robinson, which is, enticing for Amari Cooper, but he definitely knows how to put on a disappearing act, especially on the road. So if we just take a stroll through the game log, just bear with me here. At home, 16 points versus Buffalo. It was a tough matchup, but still 16 points, not too bad. 11 targets. On the road versus New England, it was a rain game. We can't totally throw that out, but he was also, he's on Stephon Gilmore. He had 2 targets, no catches, 0 points on the road. On the road versus Detroit, it's a great matchup. We saw Allen Robinson drop, 28 or 22 points versus Detroit just last week. He only had 6.8 on the road, but then back at home versus Minnesota, 14 targets, 147 yards, 34 fantasy points versus the Giants on the road, 18. Not too bad, but he really just saved his day near the end of the game where he had that 45-yard touchdown. Then at home versus Philly, 18 points, not too bad. On the road versus the Jets, who have a bad pass defense, 1.3 points. Versus Green Bay at home, 42 points. On the road versus New Orleans, 9.8 points. At home versus Miami, 26. On the road versus Washington, 14. And then at home versus the Giants, 25. The guy has big home road splits, and I ran the numbers. He's averaging 8.3 points on the road this year and 27.6 points at home this year. That's a pretty substantial difference. Not saying that's just the stone cold fact that he will suck on the road and he'll only do good at home. That he can definitely have a good game on the road. It's just pretty interesting to point out how big his splits have been. I mean, those are some massive splits, and this is a tough matchup. They are 8th DVOA versus the pass. They're only allowing 29.9 points per game to wide receivers, which is 7th use in the NFL. So I don't feel like you need to feel like that Cooper is an absolute lock on this slate. I think you can get away with fading him, and he does fall in a weird price range. We're at 9,400. It's going to be tough to fit him with Dak and Zeke, and I definitely think you could pair Dak with one of his cheaper wide receiving options like Michael Gallup or Randall Cobb or Jason Witten. I think you can get away with the Amari Cooper fade because I really don't think he's going to blow up this slate. Does he have the potential for that every single night? Yes. So just know there's potential for blow up with Amari Cooper, but he can also goose you as well. Not saying he'll probably goose you, but I think I would lean towards him scoring around 10 points more than I would with him scoring like 25 points. So Amari Cooper, play at your own risk, but I do think you could get away with fading him. Mitch Trubisky, he comes in at 8,800. And man, I do not like Mitch Trubisky, but he can have solid days and good matchups, but he can really stink it up in bad matchups as well. And unfortunately for Mitch here, not a great matchup for him. Dallas is only allowing 16.2 points per game to quarterbacks. But like I said earlier, they are 23rd DVOA versus the pass. And just to show you guys, in good matchups, he is good. 27 versus Detroit, 20 versus New York. Those are serviceable games. Tougher matchup versus LA, 11 points. Decent matchup versus Detroit, again, 19 points, not too bad. Actually, a pretty solid matchup versus Philly, only at 6 points. Versus the Chargers, 9. Versus New Orleans, 20. That was a little surprising. But 0 versus Minnesota. Obviously, only threw 3 pass attempts that game, so got to throw that out. But versus Washington, good matchup, 20 points. Bad matchup versus Denver, 5. Bad matchup versus Green Bay, 9. So good and good matchups, bad and bad matchups. I know it's really scientific, but it's just the truth. I know some quarterbacks can overcome bad matchups, like we saw Dak overcome the tough Buffalo matchup last week. If Mitch was playing Buffalo, I really would not have any confidence in him. I really don't have a lot of confidence in him in this game either. But he's a cheaper quarterback on a showdown slate, so yes, I have to have interest just because of that. I mean, he does have upside. I mean, he's had decent games this year. It's not like he sucks every single week. I wouldn't be surprised if he does pull out a dud, though, but I do think he can get you about 200 some yards and 1 to 2 touchdowns. Nothing too big, but he's definitely a flex spot candidate. So Trubisky, do I think he can suck? Yes, but he's also a cheaper quarterback on a showdown slate. If he was like 9 D500 or above, I would probably fade him, but 8,800, he's definitely on my radar as of right now. Michael Gallup, I like Michael Gallup just as a player. I think he's pretty solid. 8,200, and I do think he's interesting, but the price is up there for sure, which it's kind of making him not as interesting. But if you are fading Amari, you could definitely get leverage with Michael Gallup. He sees consistent targets every single week. 6, 6, 13, 10, 6, 4, 7, 14, 8, 7. And actually, it's kind of hard to believe, but he actually has the same target share as Amari Cooper at 21% target share, and he also has the same market share of the team's air yards at 27%. So they're pretty much mirror images in terms of, market share of the air yards and target share. So obviously Amari Cooper is the more talented wide receiver option and more dominant, but Michael Gallup's a good receiver too, and he's definitely going to see the lesser attention from the defense of the two guys. So I do think Michael Gallup would be a decent pivot off of Amari Cooper if you don't want to go all the way up to Amari. So 8,200 for Michael Gallup. Yeah, it's a little expensive, but he is an interesting GPP option. And, on average, they're getting about the same amount of targets, and so I don't mind Michael Gallup. Tough matchup versus Chicago, though. David Montgomery, I drafted this bum, I think, in the 5th round. I was like, I'm getting good value because he was normally going in like the 4th round. Yeah, it was not good value. David Montgomery, he's been bad this year. 3.4 yards per carry, and this isn't a game where I think it sets up well for him. I did like him in the game versus Detroit because it's just such a bad run defense, and I assumed they were going to be leading that game. Unfortunately, David Blau turned into a good quarterback in that game, and they were playing from behind. Still had a solid game, 16 for 75, 4.7 yards on the ground. Had that touchdown late in the game. He was on his way to a mediocre game of 9 some points, but he did catch that touchdown on the goal line where he lined up as a wide receiver, went across the middle, got a touchdown. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. But he had 16.7 fantasy points. But basically, if you don't get a touchdown from David Montgomery, you're more than likely going to be pretty disappointed because he's never going to have a huge yardage total. I know he's done it, versus the Chargers. Whoops. Yeah, good game versus the Chargers. We had 27 carries, 135 yards, but that's more of an outlier. Then the next week he had the 22 points. Then it became chalk against Detroit, where he had 6 points. I felt for that chalk as well. But he is pretty mediocre unless he gets into the end zone. And really, we can't bank on a touchdown, especially for someone like David Montgomery. Can we bank on a touchdown from Zeke? We can't absolutely bank on it, but I mean, you can. There's a high probability that Zeke can score a touchdown in any single game. David Montgomery, on the other hand, not so much, especially if the Bears struggle to move the ball, but especially with Mitch as your quarterback. But Dallas isn't a buzzsaw versus the run. They are 17th DVOA in the middle of the pack when it comes to points given up to the position, but I'd honestly rather play Cohen, who's cheaper and has the safer floor between the two with the PPR scoring. So I do think he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game. I do think the Bears could fall behind in this game, and Cohen would be the main running back at that point. And with Taylor Gabriel being out, it just opens up more targets for a guy like Tarik Cohen out of the backfield or even in the slot. So Dave Montgomery, I don't really see myself playing him in this matchup. Anthony Miller, his price has come up a lot. He's at $7K now at this point. So he might be priced out, but he absolutely balled out an elite matchup versus Justin Coleman in the slot on Thanksgiving. I was all over Anthony Miller, and he pulled through. So I hope you guys played him. Hopefully he did you guys well. 13 targets, 9 catches, 140 yards. Had a really amazing catch near the sideline. He's had 3 good games in a row, too. I mean, he has 33 targets the past 3 games, and the guy's got talent. I mean, pretty good receiver, and Taylor Gabriel obviously helps as well. 15% target share out the window. Miller will run the slot the majority of the time here. Dallas has given up about 17 points per game to slot receivers, which I say that like it's a good thing, but it's more middle of the road. But he's definitely an option, but he's just priced up a bit at this point, which hurts his fantasy appeal. So really not someone I'm going out of my way to play, but if you have 7K left in your lineup, yeah, I don't mind throwing Anthony Miller in there. He's going to see the targets, and he's been pretty good. Tarik Cohen, though, I do like Tarik Cohen. He comes in at 6,600. I think he's a pretty solid option on this slate. I'm viewing him as the better option between him and David Montgomery in this backfield, because I could definitely see Monty struggling to run the ball on the ground, and Cohen should be heavily involved in the passing game here. I mean, if you just look at his targets for the season, 4, 9, 6, 4, 5, 3, 12, 7, 5, 4, 5, 10. A little sporadic, but you're getting targets, handful of targets every single game with upside of near double digits. And I think we could see close to double digits in this game if they do fall behind. I know Dallas is only 3-point favorites, but I honestly think they should be able to cover that. He has a 17% target share in the season, and when he gets the ball in open space, he can make good things happen. I could definitely see the Bears, like I said, playing from behind. So I think he's got a double-digit floor in this matchup. And the past few games, he had 7 points versus Detroit, but then 12, 18, 13, then 3, 7, 11, 10, 9, 4, 12. So a little all over the place, but I do think this is a game where he can get you double-digit points. Now, his upside, if he gets into the end zone, I think he's going to have a really good day. But if he doesn't, I think you're probably just looking in that 10 to 13 point range, which isn't terrible at 6,600. I think he's a safer play, but he's got upside, especially if he gets into the end zone. So Tarik Cohen is on my radar at 6,600. I'd rather play him over David Montgomery. So Montgomery's probably going to have a career game. Hopefully not, though. But Randall Cobb, he comes in at 6,400. And again, like I said, if you're fading Amari, you might want to get exposure to some of the cheaper wide receiving options on the Dallas roster. And, Randall Cobb would qualify 6,400. And I think he's a solid mid-range option. He's been pretty good. 8, 12, 24, 25, 8, 4, 8, 7, 4, 8, 16. Not too bad. I mean, the 4-point games kind of kill you, but he really hasn't been too bad. And he's shown upside as well. He had 2 straight games of over 100 yards. And the targets are there, 3, 7, 7, 8, 3, or 8, 8, 3, 6, 6, 4, 6, 5. I mean, he's not going to goose you. 6,400 might be a little expensive here, but it is. I will say it's a tougher matchup in the slot, but he is a pivot from Amari if you don't want to play Amari. So cheaper exposure to the passing game here. I think Randall Cobb's going to be fine. Dak should be able to get him the ball. So Randall Cobb, I do have interest in him. Chase Daniel, can't play him. Cooper Rush, no. Jason Witten at 5,600. Never an exciting play whatsoever. And really, if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're more than likely going to be disappointed. He won't make any big athletic plays or anything. He's going to more likely just catch the ball and fall over, but you can hope the one time he catches the ball, he stumbles into the box for a touchdown, and then you'll be pretty happy. But if not, I think you're going to be a little disappointed. Never going to have a huge yardage game at this point of his career. But it is a solid matchup versus Chicago, too, who is allowing nearly 14 points per game to tight ends, which is 8th most in the NBA. Not the NBA, the NFL. So I was just watching basketball after, for fantasy purposes a little bit ago. But Jason Witten, I think he's an okay option at 5,600, but again, he doesn't have a lot of upside. You're just pretty much going to have to hope he gets to the end zone. But if he gets into the end zone multiple times, yeah, he's going to be a pretty good play. And we've seen some tight ends have some pretty good games versus Chicago this year. Obviously, guys that are more talented than Jason Witten at this point in his career. But still, I think he's a fine option. So Taylor Gabriel, he is out. I do think both defenses are in play here. I really don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Vegas doesn't either. 42.5 point total, which is one of the lowest totals on the week, just in total. And both defenses are pretty solid. The Bears have the better defense, but the Cowboys aren't terrible either. I would prefer the Cowboys just because I'd rather pick on Mitch and David Montgomery than I would Dak, Amari, and Zeke. So I would prefer the Cowboys defense. It's only a 400 difference, but I think you could play both. But I'm much more leaning towards the Cowboys side of the ball because Mitch can make a whole bunch of mistakes. So I really wouldn't want to play the Bears. I wouldn't make fun of you if you played the Bears, but definitely prefer the Cowboys. And honestly, if you want to be really wacky on the slate, you could put the Cowboys defense in the captain spot. Hope Mitch just has one of those games where he looks awful, turns the ball over 4 times, and maybe throws a pick 6, and the Cowboys defense in the captain spot might end up working out. And then you could fit in guys like Amari, Dak, Zeke, all those guys. So that could be a way to go. I also think both kickers are in play. Again, I'll prefer the Dallas kicker because I just think Dallas is going to score more points, which means more scoring opportunities for the kicker here, field goals or extra points. And Pinheiro, I don't know, Chicago just seems to have bad luck with their kickers. I could see him missing a couple of field goals, to be honest, especially in prime time. But I think both are fine here. I mean, if you think the Bears move the ball a little bit but can't get into the end zone, yeah, Pinheiro could be a fine play, but I do prefer the Dallas kicker at this point. So he's only, 3,800, so you could definitely fit in both kickers here, especially if you think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And two somewhat pretty solid defenses, kickers would make sense to play them. Now, Javon Wims, he's at 3,200, and I actually had a lot of interest in him on the Thanksgiving slate because he was min price at 3K, and Taylor Gabriel being out, he's going to get a bump in just everything. And he played 89% of the snaps, had 6 targets, 56 yards, not too bad, 10.6 points. Now, 3,200, I wish he was a bit cheaper. Obviously, the pricing is a difference from the Thanksgiving slate because I was priced as a regular slate, 3,200. It's a little pricey for a guy like Javon Wims. I think he's going to replicate 6 targets again. That might be a little far-fetched, maybe more like 3 to 4 targets, more likely. But, at 3,200, if he can get you 40 or 50 yards, maybe get into the end zone, not a high probability of that. But if he does, I think at 3,200, Javon Wims definitely has interest. And he was on the field, too. Not like he was barely on the field and just getting sparse targets or getting targets while he was on the field. He was on the field 89% of the time. It's pretty much a full-time player. So, wide receiver 3 role, don't hate Javon Wims. Not a core player or anything, but I think he's a pretty solid play. Then at this point, it gets gross fast. Tony Pollard is questionable, like I said. He didn't practice the past 2 days. Blake Jarwin, he's 2,200, but he gets targets every single game is a thing, so I definitely think he can be on your radar. So let's just go back to week 10. 4 targets, 2, 4, 3. I mean, he's involved. Is he going to be a high yardage guy? No, but I feel like Blake Jarwin has these random games where he just scores 2 touchdowns, and this could be the one. He had a 2-game stretch where he scored touchdowns in 2 consecutive games, and then he scored a touchdown week 1 versus New York. I feel like this could be just one of those games where Blake Jarwin just randomly catches 2 touchdowns and he just trolls everybody. So at 2,200, I don't hate the idea of using Blake Jarwin here at 2,200. He gets targets. He's only playing 30 to 40% of the snaps, which isn't great, but maybe get a red goal line touchdown. So he could be on your radar as a punt play just to fill out the rest of your lineup. And then Tavon Austin, it's pretty much as low as I want to go. Well, I guess Horsted, he did actually catch a touchdown last week. It was his only target, but he did catch it for 18 yards and a nice touchdown too. But, I mean, I really can't trust the guy too much. I'd rather play Jarwin for 200 or what? Yeah, 200 more. Tavon Austin, he saw 5 targets last week, but he's also only played 26% of the snaps. And, I mean, if you just look to the prior games, he's done absolutely nothing. I mean, 1 target, no targets, had a rushing attempt, no targets, 1 target, 6 targets, 1. He's a gadget player. If he ends up having one of those games where he has 5 to 6 targets, yeah, at 1,200, he's going to be a pretty good play. But you really just can't project that at this point. And, everyone's healthy on the Cowboys. So, again, he's just more of a gadget play at 1,200. Just hope he gets involved in that game. So, Tavon Austin, just like I said, he's just a whatever play. But at this point, there's really no one else I want to talk about. So I guess we could attempt to build a lineup. I always say, don't just throw this lineup in because I'm just making this up on the fly. I just want to see how lineup construction will fit. So in the captain spot, it's either probably going to be Dak or Zeke for me. We'll throw in Dak just because he's a little bit cheaper and he's the quarterback. Then we're going to plug in Zeke, and then I think the Cowboys defense is definitely in play. So 4,400. We got 6K left, so I think it's gonna be pretty easy to build a lineup that I have interest in. You could definitely go with the kicker. That's gonna be 7,200 left. We can pay up again. You could fit in Amari probably. You could also fit in Mitch, but let's see if we can fit in Amari. That's 5K left. Leaves you with the Bears defense. That's over 1,000 remaining, but I really don't care how much my salary remaining is on a showdown slate. Maybe if we just go double quarterback, we get 5,600 left. You could plug in Jason Witten. That completely fills out. I don't love using Mitch Trubisky, but he's a cheaper quarterback on a showdown slate. At least he's playing at home as well. But you can just play around with it. But I'm more than likely starting most of my lineups with Dak and Zeke, and which pretty much everyone will be, but then I'll build from there. But not too difficult to make a lineup. Now, like I said, we could always captain the Cowboys defense, and we'll see how that looks. So 8,600. Now, if I'm going to captain the Cowboys defense, I'm probably going to just try and fade Mitch Trubisky for leverage. So we'll plug in Zeke, we'll plug in Dak. Might as well just go with Cooper because I feel like we can pretty much afford anybody we want. We can go with the kicker. Then we have 8,200 left, and I think that gets us Michael Gallup. So you could just go with a full. No, we need a Bears player, don't we? Well, at this point, you could just go with this and get the Bears kicker. So we could go with the full Cowboys onslaught, then just hope the Bears get like 3 field goals and score 9 points, and then I think that would be a pretty solid way to go. You get all your high-end Cowboys guys. But again, this is just multiple ways you can go. You guys got to make your own lineups, but hopefully I gave you guys enough info to be able to do that. Anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. Core Plays video will come out on Friday, and I think that's it. So see you guys in the next video. Best of luck, and have a good Thursday. Unless you're watching this really early, then it's very tail end of Wednesday.